I was talking in the beginning before you guys started singing about, picturing yourself in grade 10, and I couldn't help but think about myself in grade 10.
Tell us about it.
So I was uncomfortable. I didn't have any acne. I was tall for my age, but I played the banjo.
So you had things working for you.
Tegan, how about you? What were you like in grade 10?
It's funny. Obviously, I spent the last 18 months in my adolescence, writing this memoir. So I've spent a lot of time with the video footage and the photos and the journal. So I know exactly what I was like in grade 10. But had you asked me 18 months ago before I started this journey, I would have said, I don't know. I was silly and sweet, and we wore huge clothes, and we were kind of awkward, but really outgoing. And when I started looking through the footage and the journals, and I think most of that existed, but I was shocked at how confident I was. I think I remembered myself as being maybe a little more introverted, and there was an enormous amount of confidence in the way that I wrote to my friends. In the videos, I'm very outgoing. I'm quite articulate about what I want from my life, what I like, who I think I am. I think that over the last 20 years, I had lost touch with that and had really kind of pictured myself as different than I was. And I was actually really pleased to see that so much of the person I am today existed back then. But I also had acne. My clothes are just way too big. I mean, I kind of still dress like that. But I look physically uncomfortable in my skin, and I think I felt that way as a teenager. I think I was really uncomfortable in my body. I didn't have any language to explain it, but I think that I was very feminine, and I don't think I wanted to be, and just there's a lot of gay women have this in common, but before we figure out who we are and we come out, oftentimes we just have long hair because we don't know what to do with it, and we're so terrified of cutting it off because we think it'll signal to everyone like gay, gay. So it's like, when I see myself on camera, that's the only thing that really pains me is I can just see I'm very uncomfortable with my chest. I'm very uncomfortable with my hips. I'm covering up a lot of my body, and my hair is just big, and there's a lot of it. And I can really see by the time I hit grade 12 when I really, music starts to happen and I really start to find myself, I cut all my hair off, and I look like me now.
But I think it is nice when you sort of remember yourself as better than you actually were, or you see positive qualities you have now, and you say, okay, well maybe they were always there.
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Sarah, how about you?
I was really complicated at 15 because I had started having a secret sexual relationship with a girl, and no one knew besides the girl that I was having sex with. So that was isolating. And I started that relationship around the same time that I started a relationship to drugs and alcohol. So that was complicated and high risk. And there was, it was hard to go back and actually read a lot of the notes that I had written around that time. I'm a jerk. I'm, a really obnoxious kid. I'm doing all the things you would expect a teenager to do and say and whatever when they're sort of pushing against authority. But there's also a lot of pain. And reading the letters, I was really struck by how acute that was at 15. And, we all say oh, teenagers are moody, or I've been asked in interviews tell me about this angst. And none of it really seems to really tap into what I think was a real global sense of distress, shame, and an actual sense of fear about my future, because I think, and it's important just for context. I mean, I was realizing that I was gay before high school. So, I'm talking about the early 1990s, late 1980s. And so, as a young person, as a small kid, my memory of who did I know who was gay? I remember probably one of my first introductions to the idea of homosexuality. This is going to be really dark, but it was Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer who killed gay men. And I remember reading Yeah, I know it is really dark, but I didn't know what homosexuality was unless I was hearing about it on the news. And in most cases, especially in the 1990s, my exposure to homosexuality, and that was what it was referred to as, it was lesbianism and homosexuality. It was very clinical. And so as a young person, I recognized the description of the people who were usually either being like it was all violent. It was violent crimes. It was violent crimes being committed against queer people, or violent crimes being committed by people who were very unwell, who were queer. And so I was absorbing a lot of that. And then just the language that was used so commonly back then, like homophobic slurs, and that was it. That was my introduction to homosexuality. And then also around the time that I hit puberty, and probably a little bit before that, I was like, oh, and I'm also gay. So
Right.
let's see, what do I have on my docket here? I can I'm potentially facing violence. Like, I actually really remember making that connection.
You remember feeling like, oh, there's a very unsafe road ahead of me.
Oh, absolutely. I did not have any example that let me think that there was anything but that ahead of me. And obviously, as I became a teenager and started to have more awareness, and people like Ani DeFranco, or even some of the older artists that my mom listened to, like Katie Lang and Melissa Etheridge or Elton John, like that stuff seemed. I mean, yes, those people were queer, or they were talking about their sexuality, but they were adults who were world famous,
Millionaires.
Yeah, like it wasn't like
cultural icons.
Yeah, and my sort of like in my inner world, in my environment, I knew of some queer people, and no one talked about it. I had friends whose parents I thought might be queer; they didn't talk about it. I thought my drama teacher in high school was gay; no one talked about it, except to make fun of the fact that he might be.
Yeah.
And I sort of always had this kind of. I guess I just had an overwhelming anxiety about it. And so, when I go back and I look at that person at 15, I don't think it's an over-dramatization to say that I really was distressed.
Yeah.
Like, distressed.
So we were a ton of fun.
Yeah, real joyful
We
crew.
were it was wild.
It was lollipops and rainbows and
But the other side of it
exciting.
was that it was like,
Yeah.
because we were going to
Two
punk
you
rock
guys,
gigs and
dress ripper over
raves.
here. things are good in the old Q studio. Things are
It was
happening.
dark, but there was the other side of it.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was the other side of
And
it.
but I guess like what I liked about, I mean, I liked a lot of stuff about the book, but one of the things I liked about the book was sort of dispelling and I'm sorry, Mitch, you have to do this. A lot of the bullshit around being twins.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and a lot
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
assumptions around that. And I don't want to get into that. So, but I do want to ask this, like, what is it like? Sorry, I should be clear for people listening to this. What I mean by that is that you guys didn't know everything that was going on with each other's lives.
We did not read each other's minds.
Well,
as
that's
people.
a very funny moment.
Oh
That,
my God. You can't know how many times we've been asked this. I mean, it's hard to cover it in one anecdote, but it's like we have been asked an infinite number of times, can we read each other's minds? Like, and people are serious.
Oh yeah.
Tegan and I, our comeback has always been, if I could read her mind, I'd be doing like something in Vegas with her or something. Like,
Yeah,
we'd be like doing card
you'd
tricks.
Would not be out slogging it out
Yeah.
as a musician.
With 2 pairs of pants.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But so Tegan, what is it like to read what Sarah was going through back then in this book? Because that's the odd part of it, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think part of what drove us to want to write this book is that people have certainly been asking us to share more of our story in different formats. And we actually, a year and a half ago, when we decided to embark on this journey, we'd actually been considering a podcast as well. And
Yeah, I think we talked about that last
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
but the book just ended up taking up so much real estate. We were like, okay, let's focus on
Yeah,
that. But we had a desire to share our story, the origin of our band, the origin of creating our musical project, and coming of age, and all of that stuff. But I also think we really did want to dispel a lot of the myths and kind of imagined projections that people put on us, us as individuals, as Tegan and Sara, but also as twins and as women. I think this assumption that we're each other's best friend, we've told each other everything, even though we were outsiders and we were different and we were both queer, we found comfort in each other because we were able to confide in each other, and we've spent 20 years traveling the world just having the best time. And it's like,
Can you hear air quotes on the
yeah,
radio? Is that
it's like, no.
is that a thing?
And so we wanted to talk about that. We wanted to talk about the complex nature of being an identical twin, of sharing your identity, of desperately needing to create an independent, world, and to be your own individual person, to celebrate what you have created together, but also to need and desire things outside of this world. And that all started in childhood. Sarah and I, we were unique. So we were almost, Sarah always likens it to, we were almost famous because people were always like, it's the twins. They're the twins. Are you guys twins? And we got really used to a certain kind of attention, and we learned how to use that and how to manipulate it and how to own it and how to make it feel good for us and how to deflect it. But I think that we also both had a deep fear that it's the thing that made us special. And so are people interested in us because we're twins, or are they interested in us because we're talented? Are they interested in us as individuals or only when we're together?
Yeah.
And what is our value
Yeah.
without the other?
Yeah.
And I think that started when we were young, but I think it really, really started to become a big question for us in high school.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said, Sarah, when you were talking about who you were in grade 10. You were talking about, you coming out, and you were talking about knowing you were gay. And I guess when I was reading this book, I've done enough work, and I've read and learned enough to know that there's no coming out. There's no such thing as a coming out narrative. There's a lot of different ways of coming out. It could be a very messy thing. It can also be a very clean thing. It can be a very beautiful thing. It can be a very, very hard thing. And I feel like we in the media and also straight people tend to imbue a certain kind of narrative on coming out that usually comes from TV. Yeah. So I wondered, I wondered though, how much of this book, whether intentionally or not, is about presenting maybe another kind of narrative here.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the big struggles of being in our career, is that sometimes it feels like you're trying to explain really complicated things with sound bites. And, we've been asked about our queer identity often over the years, and it has sometimes felt like a headline and has felt very surface, and it hasn't always felt like it was something that was being controlled. The story wasn't being really controlled by us. It was just, being queer was really complicated. I wanted to be proud of the fact that this was part of my identity, but I also wanted to be respected as a musician. And I think, sort of taking back control of that narrative and talking about my story and not letting it be I keep saying, like, it is nothing against the It Gets Better campaign or this idea, but like it cannot be chalked up to this tiny phrase. Like, just because Tegan and I are comfortable publicly discussing the fact that we identify as queer does not mean that it is tidy or that it is always okay. I have always struggled with internalized homophobia. I have. I think that the trauma of those early moments for me as a young queer person have affected me in adulthood in ways that only now can I even really start to sort of go back and think, like, maybe some of my discomfort and shame in my personal life is a result of what happens in my professional life. So, like, having people pry so much into our sexuality has made me feel deeply, much more comfortable when I can be sort of anonymous in my own personal life. And I've struggled with, feeling like just simple things like holding my girlfriend's hand on the street.
Yeah.
I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
And I know what that's about. I know that that's about fear, and that's about being judged, and that's about being looked at, and that's about physical safety. And that doesn't always line up with what people think being gay is like now. They're like, yeah, but the bank on the corner has a big rainbow float in the Pride Parade.
Yeah,
Aren't you happy? Hold your girlfriend's hand already.
The crosswalk's painted rainbow.
Yeah, and it's
Must
like,
be easy.
Or they're like, you've been out since 1998. Like, how could you still be uncomfortable? Yeah. And I think, everybody has different ways of dealing with their trauma. Tegan is a much more comfortable gay person. I don't know why. She just is. And because of the things that happened to me and my experiences, I haven't always been. And I think that is why it's important to talk about our coming out stories, because they're so diverse and they're so different and unique. Even when your twin sister is gay and you both came out around the same time, I think our experiences are different. And I also just very briefly want to say, we in the community don't often talk about our internalized homophobia and what that really looks like. And a lot of times, internalized homophobia, the person it is damaging the most deeply is the person who is dealing with the internalized homophobia. And I've struggled a lot with my self-worth and my identity. And the only thing that really got me through was looking out into an audience where I could see queer people who looked like me. Yeah. People who said, I'm gay and you give me hope and you're my hero, or whatever it was. Like, those were significant moments for me where I had to say, like, geez, I want that person to feel good about themselves. And if they feel good about me, then why can't I feel good about me? How do I tell this person that they're okay or that they're worthy if I don't feel worthy? And, like, that part of writing this book is an opportunity to talk about this stuff, not just make sound bites about it.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so glad you guys are here for that. And we've been talking so far about these kind of early challenging moments with first girlfriends and first boyfriends and these people, but it also occurred to me in reading this book, and it'll occur to you when you read it, that these are real people. Tegan, did you have to go back and have conversations with these people?
Yes.
What's that like?
I've had many, many, many conversations over the last 18 months.
How's that for you?
I think for me, in general, it's been okay. Like, it's been pretty good because there's real purpose behind us doing this book. You know, this wasn't just well, I guess we'll write a book. You know, there was some real thought behind it, and there was some real purpose. We wanted, as Sarah just discussed, there were some. There's a desire in us to share a story that isn't often told, and we felt like our narrative was valuable. We went to all of our close family and friends who are in the book, who we love very much, and we explained the purpose behind the book, and all of them gave their blessing.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that everyone is glad that we did the book or is looking forward to it coming out. I think, as Sarah's been calling it, we've had a get good with God kind of conversation a few times with friends where we're like, if they don't know that you were experimenting with drugs and had sex with one of us, you should tell them now because the book's going to come out. Oh, my parents aren't going to read it, but they will. or their friend will and tell them about it. Right. So, but yeah, we had a lot of conversations. Most of the people in the book, honestly, are still in our lives. There's a few people who aren't, but by the time you do multiple legal reads and, you know, give everyone pseudonyms and describe them differently, I mean, a very small circle of people will even know who most of these characters are. But my main two interests in the book, Spencer and Alex, so my boyfriend in high school and my secret girlfriend and best friend in high school, they are still two of the closest people to me on the planet.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so I think, and for me, when I went to them, I just said, this is an important story I really want to tell. For me, discovering my sexuality, finally figuring out who I was a revelation, and it was so thrilling to finally have an answer and to know that I was the person that I was, and I really wanted to share that. And but yeah, everyone's having a different set of emotions. I think our parents are like, okay, you guys took a lot of acid. My mom just calls us liars all the time now.
Oh, good.
But I mean, our new record is basically all about lying, but that's lying or masking who you are. I mean, it's you know, depends on what angle you're looking at.
Well, here she is. No,
yeah, totally. Mom, come on in. We did promise her own press circuit to explain her side of things.
I do like the way you guys talk about drugs. I think it's different than the. I mean, again, I'm going to get fired for this, but like, you know, there's a certain anti-drug PSA, and I don't want to give the impression that this book is in any way like, please go out and do mescaline, it'll make your life better.
No,
but it's again
quite the opposite, yeah.
not unlike the coming out story. It's not without its share of nuance. That,
Sure.
You know, it had positive parts in your life, it had
Sure.
negative parts in your life. You know.
Yeah. I always, you know, when my mom read the book, she was really distressed by the drug stuff because she did know we did. We had jokingly talked about doing drugs in our adulthood. I don't think that she
imagined we were smoking weed, I think.
Yeah, and she knew we had taken acid, but like I don't think that she knew the significant role that it played in our early years. And she felt like really concerned that people would see that as a you know, like a result of bad parenting. And
an indictment of her,
yeah,
right?
And I think that, you know, it's so important for us to stress here that our parents were significantly like more in touch and aware and zoomed in on who we were as people than I think a lot of parents were. They were very aware of the fact that we were, you know, if you ask them now, they'll say, of course we knew you were struggling with your sexuality. Of course we knew that you were potentially hooking up with, you know, girls. They were trying to approach us delicately. They didn't want to do things wrong. And it was the 1990s. And for the 1990s, man, the framework and language that my mom had, that fact that she would even sit down with us and say like, hey, it's okay if you're experimenting with girls. I mean, this was like very advanced for the time. However, it's not about my mother's parenting. It was about where we were at as teenagers and whether or not we were comfortable talking about our sexuality, you know, internally and externally. And so, you know, and the drug stuff's complicated. It's a little bit of being teenagers. It's a little bit of being high risk and jerks. Some of it, I think, is about self-medicating and being really, for me anyways, like I liked detaching from my body because my body made me feel bad because I felt out of control of the feelings that I was having about girls, because I was depressed, because I was mad, because I was scared. And drugs made me feel like joyful. I had fun. Tegan and I, we were having a really difficult time in our relationship. Oh my God, we would take drugs. We would be joyful, childlike, having fun with each other. Yeah. So there were positives.
And when writing, we really labored over how to use drugs as a tool in the book. We didn't want to just tell a bunch of funny stories about
The time I got so fucked up that I blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that was not the intention. The intention was, it was a theme and it was a vehicle to tell a part of our story that's very important, which is that we were very, as Sarah said, disconnected and at each other's throats at the beginning of high school. And drugs allowed us to open up and be more fun and to not feel uncomfortable and to connect. And when we found music, music replaced drugs. You know, music became this intoxicating thing that took up so much of our lives. It became the thing that allowed us to say the things we felt, to say the things we thought, to put to voice our fears and our anxieties and our sexuality that we couldn't talk about to our friends or to each other in music. And it replaced these things. And so for us, it was important not to glamorize or write how to do drugs.
Yep.
But it was also important to us not to sanitize the story, because I think women often have to do that. You know, men get celebrated for like expanding their minds and going on cross-country road trips, and Harry Styles is on the cover of Rolling Stone talking about taking mushrooms. And I think with men, we give them more leeway.
Well, it's romantic to us to
Yeah,
imagine.
whereas women overdose.
Yes.
Women,
Yeah. And I think for Sarah and I, it was important to say that we were three-dimensional people, and we weren't your typical teenagers that are depicted in television as, you know, writing in bubble letters in our journals. We were complicated, and you know, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
And that's probably more realistic than what's depicted anyway. So
Well, I mean, and that goes back to what we were talking about. It's more realistic than a soundbite can get to.
yeah.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Tegan and Sara about their memoir, High School, and their new album, Hey, I'm Just Like You. I may not be a bubble letter, but I was charmed by the use of the letter Z in Garage Wars.
Yep.
I just feel like that's also a relic of the 90s I don't get to see anymore.
Yeah.
It also had like one of those oolongs or whatever over top of
The
the letters.
umlaut?
Oh, the umlaut, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like they really went for it. When I found the original flyers from Garage Wars, the competition that we entered in high school.
Yeah, can you say what it is? for
Yeah,
folks?
so Garage Wars was we entered it in the local band competition at the college and university in Calgary, and it was all college and university bands. But one of my mom's cousins was going to school there at the time and had brought the flyer to my grandparents' house and had said, you know, you two should sign up for this, and we did, and we won, and it sort of catapulted us very quickly into the music scene of Calgary at that time in 1997, 1998. It was
a whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind. We were in grade 12
Yeah.
taking like Bio 30 and going to like also play gigs on the weekend.
I watched one last night. It was like I watched an episode. Maybe we'll dig it up for afterwards. But it was like an episode of a CBC profile on you
Yeah.
guys.
They come to our drama class.
They come to your drama class.
Oh, I'll never
Yeah.
forget it.
And you guys are trying to act natural.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
it's-
we're just going to improvise a little bit. You know.
Yes, it was the thing that really reads for me in those early tapes and interviews, because there's also a ton of CBC interviews from when we go on we go play a music festival like New Music West or something in Vancouver, and I mean, we are in high school, like we
Yeah.
are taking days off from high school to go do these things, and there is this weird combination of like, you can see that we are like soaking it up, excited, and then this also smug, annoying teenager face that we do where we're sort of like over the adults.
We're impatient.
Like the adults are like, so the girls are from Edmonton. Not Edmonton, Mike. It's Calgary. Oh, it's Calgary. Oh, excuse me. And like you can just see our stupid little faces. We're just like, ugh, these people are idiots. Like,
And they say they can read each
Yeah.
other's minds.
you know, but we're like, you have to
What do your
imagine.
boyfriends think of all this craziness happening right
They're
now?
like, oh boy, there's really things are going quick, aren't they? And you can just see though that we're like beyond irritated because we are annoying 17-year-olds
Yeah.
who have been hanging out with other 17-year-olds playing music and, you know, drinking and partying in basements and whatever. And suddenly we're on the CBC talking to adults, and they're like, well, isn't this something?
How
And-
about that?
And we're just acting like little jerks, you know? And why not?
So I wanted to set that up because some of these songs are from these songs are from back in those days, right? These are songs on the new record that you wrote back in the era that's in the book in high school, and you revisited them, and you re-recorded them and you rearranged them, and so I was going to give you a heads up for what we're about to do here, because I don't want to catch you off guard.
Great.
We're going to play a very early version of the song that became the title track for Hey, I'm Just Like You.
Great.
And then we'll mix it into the new version.
Sweet.
Sounds like magic.
Hey, I'm just like you. Maybe I'm snappy and blue. But hey, I'm just like you. Except I've got nothing to prove. Hey, I'm just like you. A little messed up and blue.
we were more obnoxious as adults than we were as teenagers.
I was going to say, once CBC bleeps you, always CBC bleeps you.
We're very proud of how much swearing's on this record.
Bleeped by the CBC since 1995.
Feeling pretty
Tegan
into
and
it.
Sara
Yeah.
are with me in studio
Pretty
right now.
stoked.
What do you make of that? What do you make of hearing those two things back to back?
You know, here's the thing is that in 20 years, we hadn't listened to our old demos. You know, there were maybe, we'll call it 40. We've picked this number randomly. I don't know why I'm too lazy to spend 20 minutes and just count and see what it is. But let's call it 40 songs that
You
we
got
wrote
it.
in high
That's a
school.
very biblical thing to do.
Yeah.
40 years in the desert,
Exactly.
40 days. Yeah, right, sure.
So over that 3 years, we wrote about 40 songs. We demoed them all. And then we just moved on, you know, like young artists do. We just think we can write a better song, and we just moved on. Made 8 records, sit down to write a book. A couple months into writing the book, I'm like,
Things went well.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is great. Loving this. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we're writing a book about high school. Got to find those old songs and see how they were. And I could have, you know, told you a few of the songs. I remembered parts of I'll Be Back Someday, for example. Like, you know, but it was called Johnny, My Friend. I knew that. Like, you know, there were things in my head that I recalled, but mostly I just was like, it'll be 2 tapes of junky, rough, you know, first songs that Sara and I wrote, and I'll listen to it to reference a few songs, and that'll be it. It took months. Actually, from the day I first started searching to the day I finally got both tapes in my possession was almost 6 months, because no one we knew had kept them. So a few random friends eventually, and random meaning like I pushed and pushed and pushed. Finally, a few people were like, okay. Oh, my dad has a copy.
Okay, so
or
you didn't have to buy them on eBay or anything.
they don't exist. We looked everywhere. But finally, a few people were like, okay, I got tapes. So we got 1 copy of each tape. And when I heard the songs, I feel the same way today, hearing the early version versus the new version. They're really good songs. The melodies, the concepts, the song structure, the actual thing that Sara and I are doing, like weaving our voices together and interlacing what our ideas together, the way that we're singing together, all of this. I mean, these were the first songs we ever wrote, and we were already doing all that. All of that we came to naturally. All of that was instinct. And since then, all we've been doing is perfecting that. You know, like I think I think that I have a way of crafting a song, and I've always had it. And finding those songs verified that this is how I go about writing. This is what inspires me, and I've just gotten way better at it. But when I went back to the originals, what I realized was that all the ideas, they were there. I just didn't have any of the skill yet.
But you did. I guess what blows me away is that most people, when they go back to the first songs they ever wrote, are like, if anyone ever hears this.
But some of them are bad. Some of them are not great. Some of them are very wordy. Some of them are nonsensical. Some of them, the recording themselves, it was eroded with time. The tapes are warped. You know, the 12 songs that made Hey, I'm Just Like You aren't just 12 songs off those cassettes. You know, I'd say maybe 7 or 8 of them are the majority of the song, but most of them have been stitched together. So we took favorite parts from other songs and made bridges or pre-choruses out of them. We had to, you know, rewrite a lot of the lyrics. We had to, you know.
But a lot of it was
But the melodies
good.
and
Like, a lot of it was
that's what I
good.
mean. Like so many of the ideas were great.
I'm with Sara.
Yeah, a lot of it was good. Like I'm with
Maybe it's because I
I'm
had
with
to do
you.
the pre-production and I had to like make sense of them. But
Me and Sara are going like, no, it's great.
yeah, where were you two when I was in Palm Springs all by myself doing this? No, but I'm just pointing out that it took work.
We went to grad.
You
So,
know,
yeah.
because people always say, you guys were all grad.
Yeah, we
People
grad.
always say, oh my God, if I had to go back and look through my old journals, I would just put them back in the box. And here's the thing, is that we thought that too.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Like I listened to it and was kind of like, oof. But the more I listened to it, because again, I was pulling from it like content for the book. You know, I was trying to capture my voice. I was trying to capture the spirit. I was, you know, making note of the things we said between songs. I was quoting lyrics. And the more I listened, the more the melody stuck with me. The more that I was like, wow, Don't Believe the Things They Tell You They Lie is a really great song. And conceptually, I would never write a song like this, and I would never say things this way anymore. I would never be so blunt as to say, we don't have fun when we're together anymore.
Is that going to change the way you write songs?
I
the
hope
future?
so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
You want to get back to that?
I think it's gonna. I think
I'm going in the other direction. I'm going to make like one of those weird prog rock records. That's really, it's just like, I'm going to become a character. There's going to be like a folklore.
Sarah's hit the contrarian part, but I do think that
Sarah
it
Quinn
really,
in 7/8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Sure.
I don't know. I definitely think that there was a vulnerability and there was a directness to the music that I think you lose when you become a public figure. And I think that hearing it, it was amazing. I truly felt that we had been I feel like our early music was underappreciated, and I'm very honest about this. I think that we were written off because we were young and we were girls, and I think if we had been men or young boys, I think it would have been completely different. And we all know that because that's the course it is for many women. And I just listened to those songs and I thought, my God, these are great songs. We're gonna have to work on them. We're gonna have to make them better. But this is no different than any other song we've written, and we should make this the new record.
I'm so happy to hear you say that because I was just thinking of every songwriter who was going, Jesus Christ, I wish I could have written this when I was 16 years old. Mitch, I'm so sorry. I'm not supposed to be cursing. I don't know what's going on.
It's us. We're bringing
It's the new
forward.
era. We don't care what anyone thinks anymore, so swear.
They're bad influences, Mitch. I'm so sorry.
Soon he's gonna be coming in here high on acid.
Yeah.
He's gonna be like, guys, I'm rolling, but I'll be done in like 2 hours. I'll be down. I'll be fine.
What do you think's
Microdose.
going? Yeah, we're microdosing here.
Yeah.
I choose to macro dose. Sarah, it must be emotionally though a trip to hear those old songs.
Yeah. I really avoided listening to the digitized files that Tegan sent me. She did all the hunting and gathering for the archival stuff, and I was living in Los Angeles for the time we were writing the book. I was spending every day at the library. I would write at the library, and I was embarrassed to look at the video, and I was uncomfortable with listening to the audio at the library. And it was after one long day of writing in the library. I was jumping in an Uber, and I was heading back home, and I thought, oh God, I better listen to this stuff. Like I better listen to it just in case I got it wrong or I didn't remember it correctly. And I started crying in the Uber. I was listening to.
Don't you mean the lift?
No, Uber, Lyft. I don't know. I'm impartial. I'll take either. God, Tegan, branding stress.
It was a.
It was a car. It was
a horse-drawn carriage.
It was a horse-drawn carriage. I was on my BMX bike, and I was riding back to my house in LA, and I was listening.
You started crying.
I started crying.
Why?
I actually was listening to the audio from Garage Wars, and it's the final. And the song that we close our set with at the time was called Just Me. It's on the album as All I Have to Give the World Is Me. And I don't know. I heard our little voices, and then we kind of sing with like British accents, and then there's all these people talking in the bar, and I can hear my dad and my stepdad talking on the videotape. Can you, like saying like, my stepdad's like, Steven, did you get it? Do you have him in the, do you got the thing? And my dad's like, the lights blow out their face. Like they're talking over top of us.
Oh, so sweet.
And we're just in the background playing this thing. And I don't know, the emotion was probably about, this was the moment before we won the competition. This is minutes before we will win the competition and our whole world will change.
Whole lives change.
Whole lives change.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just really floored me. I just realized that we were, actually the word that kept coming up for me was brave. I kept thinking, God, we were like these like really confident 17-year-olds and who just jumped up on stage at this like college band wars thing, and everyone was playing like electric guitars and like doing like guitar solos and whatever. Most of the bands were guys. There were women in bands, and it wasn't all guys, but it was like, it felt very like of that era indie rock kind of music. And we got up on stage with these giant raver pants and pulled out 2 acoustic guitars and played a song where the chorus is, all I have to give the world is me. That's it. Like, and it just broke my heart to listen to it, because I just thought like I could finally see it how probably the judges saw it, which is that, yeah, fine, we weren't as polished or as, accomplished as these other bands, but like just the confidence to get up there and do that, and to have something coherent and a message that was so earnest, and to look the way that we did. I don't know, it just made me feel super emotional. And I actually, what I wrote at the time, to me, was missing that joy. And listening to the music and watching the videos made me go back and sort of rework those chapters to put that joy, like the joyfulness of what it felt like to be able to do something that could inspire and provoke such a strong response in people. And I sort of had forgotten what that felt like. It used to feel like magic. We used to get on stage, and I knew that I could feel the anticipation of when we were going to play and what that was going to do to the crowd. And it's been 20 years of me kind of taking that for granted, because you do get used to it. It's like love. The first time you fall in love and you think like, I'll die without this person. I mean,
that was what it felt like on stage. And I just, to see the video, but to hear the audio, I mean, it really floored me.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for people to listen to the record, of course, and for the people to read the book. But I'm as excited that you guys, this new tour you're doing is just kind of you guys.
Yeah.
So I think it's the closest we're coming to Garage Wars in our lives. It's been nice talking to you guys.
Thank
Nice
you
to
for
talk to
having
you.
us.